Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Fallen London. Today we're going to be carrying on with the exceptional story, The Tale of Old Fritz. The shrill song of the drowned echoes off the rusted hull of the Incredulous, seeming in beat with your own clumsy footfall. The drownies pour from every corner, doorway and corridor. Each is adorned in thick leather overcoats and sou'westers. Most float with a drowny's weightless grace, but some appear desiccated and dry, as if exposed to air and dry rot. You look around. Only one corridor, its silt carpet, undisturbed, is vacant. Well, it's pushed deeper into the ship. As clawed fingers begin to stroke the rubber of your suit, you take flight once more. You rush down the corridor, drownies mere inches from you. Your lungs burn with strained effort. Darkness swims at the edges of your vision. And then you see it. A wall of water bubbles impossibly in a doorway. A boundary past which no water flows, and air holds court. Something here is holding back the Z. The drownies have been shepherding you here, quite deliberately. But thoughts as to why dissipate when a hand rakes across your shoulder. You and the doomed diver plunge headfirst through the water. The two of you burst through the water into the impossible pocket of air. The change in pressure and buoyancy is so drastic that you almost tumble over. Steadying yourself, you look around. It appears you've found the bridge of the Incredulous. The ship's wheel is coated in barnacles, and the silt of the Z floor leaves the room in a dull, grey colour. You look over at the doomed diver and are alarmed to see them unlocking their helmet's visor. They lift it. Take a breath. Take another. Cautiously, you do the same and breathe in the rank, stagnant air. "A minute to think, at least," says the doomed diver. "Oh, let's question them. This is no research vessel. But they know." You explain your findings on deck. The doomed diver's voice is hoarse. "When I last stepped foot here, it was a research vessel. I swear it." They run a rubbered glove across their face. "Our goal was to study the creature, to make our names in cryptozoology." You explain exactly what you saw, how this is a ship for killing, not study. The doomed diver bows their head. "Then," they sigh, "the captain's madness must have infected the rest of the crew." They slam a fist against the wall. "We were scientists, damn it, not butchers." Well, let's examine the brittle rock. Would it be of any use? You pull the piece of now slimy rock from the depths of your suit and show it to the doomed diver. Exposed to the air, even stale, the rock emits a fragrance of cold, damp grass and recently dug earth. The doomed diver squints their eyes and takes a step back. "What is that?" they ask. You explain where you found it. "I don't like it," they say. "It's not natural." Natural or not, there is something to this rock. It fills you with a sense of finality, with the ever-present notion of the end. Well, let's speculate on what the drownies could want. Why are they here in such numbers, and why cluster at the wreck? "They're the crew," the doomed diver says after a pause. "I recognise their faces, each one of them." They suppress a shudder. "No matter how bloated or shrivelled they are, I knowed 'em even if their skin had sloughed, and they'd come no more than walking corpses." They let out a bitter laugh. "I suppose I should be grateful they're only singing corpses." There must be a reason why the Drownies are still here, why they're still crewing the Incredulous. The doomed diver shakes their head and looks out of the doorway into the darkness. Their former crew gather there, in greater and greater numbers, singing their song to the deep. "Why am I here?" they ask, though they await no response. "They've unfinished business, just like me." Okay, well, let's look around the bridge for anything useful. There has to be another way off this doomed ship. At first, it appears like nothing of use is to be found. It's the usual ship's bridge. You're about to give up when you glimpse something sinewy and organic looking under the map table. The rubber of your suit squeaks harshly in the stillness of the room as you kneel to retrieve the object. A stinking odour of rot comes away with it. You show it to the doomed diver, who looks just as repulsed. "That's Berlin, where I've never set foot on a ship. But God's blood, what's happened to it, and why is it here?" We could ask if it's Old Fritz is doing. Could the monster hold sway over the Drownies? The doomed diver shakes their head. "No, at least, I don't think so." They pinch the bridge of their nose. The act is awkward and bumbling, as the thick rubber gloves barely fit through the helmet's window. "There's some larger force at work here, and I think I know what it might be, though I'm loath to say its name." You're about to demand some answers when a terrible silence settles upon the ship. The Drownies' singing has stopped. The feeling of being watched returns. You look to the door and your breath catches in your throat. Framed by the water barrier shimmering on the door's threshold is the very spit image of the doomed diver. Except it cannot be them. The figure stands without a suit, in unsurvivable pressure. Their skin is tinged a drowned pelican. The diver stands next to you still, and they've also spotted the figure. Their face, a shade of pale you didn't think could exist on a person still alive. "Silas," they whisper, in a voice like 1,000 drowned tomorrows. "Is that all you can say to the brother you abandoned?" responds the Drownie, voice strained as though struggling through the water swamping his lungs. Clarify the relationship between living and the dead? Are they related? Why did the diver keep this from you? "Yes," replies the doomed diver. "The better part of me was lost with the Incredulous. My brother, the captain of our ship." Silas sneers, revealing blackened, rotting teeth. "Lost?" He turns to you. "Tell me, can you truly lose something that you discard?" "I never discarded you, brother," replies the doomed diver, stung. "I just couldn't go on with our search, not after what happened, not when you changed. You weren't coming back." "How could I, when you left me?" Silas says. The doomed diver lapses into a simmering silence. "How were you abandoned, Silas? It's an accusation that shouldn't be taken lightly." The Drownie closes their eyes. You see rivulets of water shake down their face, though whether they're tears or Z-water, or if such a distinction is even meaningful for a Drownie, you cannot tell. "Ever since we were young, we fantasized about scouring the Z and discovering something new, something to set afire under London's scientific minds. together. And then we learned of Old Fritz from the tales told by sailors, and we believed our time had finally come. For years we scoured the sea, and just when we were close, my sibling lost their nerve. Well, let's listen to said sibling's argument. The two of them stand face to face for the first time in years. "If I lost my nerve," says the doomed diver, "it was because you'd lost your mind, rambling about a communion with the Lady Black, deciding that our cause needed to change." They sigh. "I saw what our pursuit had done to you. I decided it wasn't something I could be a part of any longer, so I left and found purpose elsewhere with a wife and daughter." Silas's anger seems to falter, as if the mention of a niece has surprised him. "A wife?" he says in tones of wonder. Then his features twist. "And yet you're here, just as she promised." What does he mean, as she promised? Was this a trap all along? Silas answers you without taking his eyes off the doomed diver. "Lady Black, Shallowed be her name. She's the reason you're here. She's the one holding the Z in place, permitting you to breathe, giving us a space to speak. Such was the bargain. My sibling at my side, in exchange for my service, to see my task to the end." The doomed diver's eyes bulge. Their face reddens. And when they speak, flecks of spittle spew from their mouth. "You damned fool! You made a deal with the deep wraith?" Silas's knuckles crack as he clenches his fists. "And? So what if I have? You weren't here when we finally came across that hellish beast. You weren't with us when a single bite from Fritz's cursed mouth buckled the hull and sent those of us yet alive careening into the briny deep. Its complexity claimed us, made us his, drowned vassals to a king we never chose. He promised us that we could live, yet further still, and all we had to do in return is serve him." He shudders. "It was only later that we realized our mistake." But what about Lady Black? Where does she fit into the tale of Old Fritz? Brownies belong to his complexity, whatever their pledges before drowning. For the first time, Silas lets a smile replace his rigid sneer. He looks out into the Unterzee. "She came to me again," he says, his voice raw with something like desire. "The creatures from my dreams. Even though I'd failed her, she found me and offered to break our terms with the king in Coral. All we need to do is rid her of Old Fritz once and for all." And why should Lady Black care about Old Fritz? Silas laughs. "He has taken up residence in one of her abysses, in one of her sacred and lightless manses. In doing so, he has defiled it. We will cleanse him." Okay. This is getting interesting, isn't it? So I can either tell Silas he's just taken one bad deal over another, second master in place of the first, or we can commend him on his choice. If one must serve, then one should serve the kinder master. I'm going to call him a fool. Silas slams a fist against the wall, sending flecks of waterlogged paint across the room. "You know nothing of our plight," he spits out. "When you've become a puppet of his complexity, then you may judge me and my crew. Until then, we will keep hunting our quarry, and we will be glad of our reward from the Lady Black." He stops and takes a few gurgled breaths. "She, at least, intends to keep her end of the bargain." I almost became a puppet of his complexity. Yeah, that was a fun story. Let's ask them how they managed to sail the ship. It's engulfed by the Z floor. too mangled to breach the surface. We simply carry it on our backs. You wait for Silas to elaborate, but he doesn't. So that's it, asks the doomed diver. You're doomed to sail the Unterzee. Silas nods. And I want your help. I need your help. I wish it hadn't come to this, but it was the only way. He steps into the room properly now and extends a swollen hand to his sibling. I can't take down Old Fritz without you. Lady Black's dreams have brought you to me. Be with us again, and let's finally put an end to this hunt. The doomed diver is silent for a long time. Their hand trembles. Then they clasp their brother's hand and shake hard. An accord has been struck. Okay. So, now we have two new options here. Give a rousing cry of support to this endeavour. You feel the call of the hunt rise within you. Or, we can remind them that you're still here. Hello, yes, I'm here, in the corner. The two siblings appear to have forgotten you haven't consented to this. You know what? Rousing, let's go. Let's hunt this whale. You shove your fist into the air and let out a valiant wail. As if in response, Silas and the rest of the Drowny crew do the same. The Incredulous erupts into a cacophony of vigour. A deep pounding of fists against metal resounds throughout the ship as the crew drum their hands on the walls, their gaze transfixed on Silas. Yes, he says. It's time. We sail once more, my beloveds. It's time now to restart what the siblings set out to do all those years ago. The cry of the Drownies recedes further into the ship as they make their way to their stations. Time to close up those helmets, says Silas. An expression of ecstasy etches into his worn features. Before you can ask why, the barrier that kept the Z at bay dissolves, and a cascade of filthy water floods the bridge. You snap shut the window to your diving helmet just in time, sealing yourself against the Z. Silas guides the doomed diver to the wheel and gestures for them to take it. They do so, with no hint of hesitation. Surely no one can heave a ship such as the Incredulous upon their backs. You leave the bridge and follow a group of Drownies through the bowels of the ship. They exit through a door in the hull, and you descend with them back to the Z floor. Watch as the ship disgorges what appears to be its entire mustering of crew. They cluster around the sunken bulk of the keel, and then, in unison, begin to lift the ship. Their fragile-looking bodies straining under the effort, but not bowing. With a grunt that reverberates into the depths, the ship is hoisted up and the Drownies move in and under, hauling it upon their backs. The crew turn their drowned faces to you, and, for an instant, the Incredulous appears as a Goliath of the Z, 100 eyes staring out from a shell. Their meaning is clear, however. They're shouldering their burden. It's time you did yours. You make your way back up into the ship and into the bridge. The hunt for Old Fritz is on. On your way to the bridge, you pass a doorway and spare a quick glance inside. Two Drownies sit at a crate, evidently using it as a table. Between them is a deck of waterlogged cards, some lying where placed, others gently lifting off the makeshift table and floating away, only to be snatched from their escape by gnarled fingers. One of the Drownies, a woman with a puffy tongue that refuses to rest inside her mouth, turns to you and shrugs. Her companion, a boy of no more than 15, grins. We're not needed, he says. His voice cuts through the water and permeates your helmet. He turns over another card. Queen of Diamonds. But you are. He nods towards the bridge. You turn away and hurry off. Finished your sightseeing? Asks Silas, his voice echoing through the water. You nod, exaggerating the movement so it's obvious inside your helmet. Good, he says, as impressive as my crew is, with a job to do. The light. He points to 2 control sticks that control the lamp attached to the top of the ship. You take your assigned place. The hunt is truly on. So we have a few options here. We can scan the Z floor. It's unlikely he'll be there, simply laying down for a nap, but one never knows. We can move the light through the brackish water. He could be up there, somewhere above you, just waiting to descend and swallow you whole. Might even be peaceful. We can show Silas the rotten baleen. Maybe he knows what it is. You produce the trophy, befouling it even more, if that were possible. You show the wretched item to Silas. He takes it from you and lets the rough material run through his fingers. I see you found the only evidence we ever won from our prey, he says, his voice cutting through the water like oil in wine. We wrenched this off him during the encounter that felled us. I wonder if its foulness is a product of his new lair in Lady Black's abyss. That rot appears new and growing. Silas' face is grave. I fear he may not be the old Fritz we once sought. I fear he may have become a great deal worse. Well, let's scan the Z floor. The sickly, pale green glow of your lamp washes across the smooth, silky silt of the Z floor. In an instant, creatures that exist purely in darkness are thrust into a new world, one of light. All of darkness's dangers are revealed. The various shapes frantically scuttle away. Some you recognize, others you're sure have never been glimpsed before. They move too quickly to document, a task for some other poor fool at the bottom of the Z floor. Well, let's move the light through brackish water. Your lantern only catches floating specks in its beam. What are those? Like dust motes of the Z. You try to recall what you'd read. Sand, grit, old shells. But there was something else. There was... you remember. Death and decay. Living beings, both originally from the Z and not, die, and are eventually pulled apart by current and creature. Eventually, all is reduced to nothing but the tiny floating debris. You decide that that's enough thinking on the subject for now. Time passes slowly. The rhythmic steps of the drowny crew, the gentle rocking of the Incredulous underfoot. All of it threatens to lull you into complacency. But how long can you keep this hunt up? You peer down at your oxygen lifeline. It remains coiled at your feet, slowly unfurling with each lurch of the ship, like some great Z serpent. You realize that the drowny crew might have untangled it from the rest of the wreck when you weren't looking. Otherwise, it would have surely already disconnected. It only has so much to give, though. Eventually, you'll be forced to turn around, or end up lost at Z yourself, with only the Fathom King, or worse, to save you. Uh-oh, swing the light? Oh God above, is that Old Fritz himself? An ancient rock, anchored in the silt. Not quite a giant whale, I see. There are tales told of boulders like the one your lamplight traces across. Some protrude for miles out of the Z floor, becoming the various islands that life in the neath call home. Others only just crest the waves, holding out hope for the day a ship sails unknowingly into it. But this rock, neither of those, having halted its growth mere feet out of the Z-floor. Still, as rock formations go, it's impressive. It's just, fortunately, or unfortunately, merely that, not Old Fritz. You glance down at your lifeline. The slack is giving. In just a few more steps, it will become taut, and if you don't turn around, will pop free of your helmet. If the doomed diver has noticed this, they don't appear to care. Before you can point it out, the darkness around you grows even heavier, more oppressive. What little light is coming from the surface, blocked out. You crane your neck up. The diving suit is in your way. Crane further. There, above the Incredulous, a gargantuan shape glides through the water. "It's him," says Silas. Old Fritz bellows an ear-splitting song, vile in pitch and resonance. What is that? Pipe organs and choral music? Then he dives with horrid and unnatural grace, all the worse for his vast bulk, disappearing deep into a ravine that opens like a rotten flower beneath him. "This is it," says Silas, unmoved by the sonorous toll of the whale song. "Prepare to dive." What about my oxygen line? Grab onto something. Gonna be a steep drop. Oh no. A faint popping noise. Lovely. The Leviathan's tail sweeps the edge of the undersea cliff and slips down the abyss, like a vast tongue sliding back into a waiting maw. Silas lets out an eerie undulation, an admixture of alarm and joy. "He's there! The big, beautiful bastard! This is it!" The doomed diver jumps up, a fist in the air. For a brief moment, you see the past melt away from the siblings. A strained tug on your suit threatens to pull you over. In the second before the bow of the Incredulous goes over the cliff, your airline pulls free of your suit. The lifeline severed. You have only the breaths left in your helmet. Oh no. You are falling into the abyss, ship and crew and quarry. Any remaining light from the surface is extinguished by the vast walls surrounding the trench. Only the weak glow of your lamp offers the merest hint of something tangible down here. The air in your suit is already to take on a stale quality. How long do you have before it ceases to supply your body with the vital oxygen you need? We can embrace the thrill of the hunt. The crew's cries and songs are infectious. Or we can hold on tight. All that awaits at the bottom of an abyss is death, and yet that is exactly where you're heading. Now let's embrace the thrill. Your stomach whirls and somersaults inside you, threatening to force its contents out. You manage to keep your insides inside. Now is not the time to be sick. Now is the time to kill a giant. Old Fritz's enormous tail, the only part of him you can see, swoops and glides in front of you, propelling the ancient beast deeper into the abyss. A few good shots, you think. That's all it would take. And then you can haul your prize back to London. A heavy hand clasps your shoulder. The doomed diver. They're not looking at you, but at old Fritz. Every muscle is taut through their helmet. You see an expression of what can only be described as rapture. You can focus the light on old Fritz. If Silas is still in control of his ship, he'll need to keep his quarry in view. The monster's tail cuts through the water, plunging old Fritz deeper into the abyss. You marvel at his unfathomable size, at the amount of water it displaces with each move. Even the great Incredulous is rocked looked in its wake as if it were a toy in a bathtub. The whole time you keep the light on Old Fritz, you can't help but feel that he's not using his full power. How can you be keeping pace with him, with your unsupported freefall? Does he want to be caught? Or worse, is he playing with you? The minutes tick away. 5, 6, 7. Time ticks on. You try to take small, shallow breaths, in desperate hope that by doing so you'll prolong whatever oxygen is left in your suit. You glance over to the doomed diver. They stand stoic, unmoving, and seemingly in their element. Let's swing the light around. The abyss. What else is down here? What else lines the cliff walls as you sink ever deeper? The beam of light catches the jagged cliff walls of the abyss. As the light flicks over them, some of the rocks looks as if they've been carved into. Lettering. Words flash past as you scan the walls, too quickly to read, but you're sure the whole cliffside is covered in scrawls. Before you can consider what this might mean, something else catches your eye. People crawling up from below the ship and onto the deck. The crew. They're moving to take their places at the harpoon guns. You peer closer at the two taking aim and realize you recognize them. They're the card players you saw earlier. The young boy turns his swollen face to yours through the cabin's window and smiles. Now we're needed, that grin tells you. The minutes continue ticking away. 12, 13, 14. Your mind begins to swirl with phantom images as you suck at the oxygen left to you. It's an unnatural feeling. Each breath normally brings a hearty dose to your body, but now it's like you're choking, drowning in the confines of your suit. You hear the chitter of bats and the laughter of children, no different to if you were walking through Tyrant Gardens on a Sunday afternoon. You turn your head, looking for some logic to the sounds. Instead, you now hear a gentle crackle of a small fire and the dry rustling of someone turning the pages of a book. It's all so comforting. The doomed diver tilts their head. Are they hearing it too? They stagger and fall to one knee, and you wonder if they're out of oxygen already. Maybe they didn't take as much care as you did to conserve it. Then they stand again, resume their duty. Well, let's aid the drownies. If this crew are going down fighting, then you will too. You keep the lamp on Old Fritz's tail like a target to an archer. The drowny crew manning the harpoon guns aim desperately. Several harpoons fire and then bounce off the scarred hide of the Leviathan. All seems hopeless, until one pitched by the woman with the bloated tongue strikes true and embeds itself in the tail. The crew give out a cheer as more of their harpoons begin to hit their target, the ropes straining at their strength of their foe. And then an ear-splitting moan echoes through the abyss. The ropes go taut. The Incredulous bucks. The harpoon ties snap from the force. 7 and 7, the minutes have gone. Now, almost 7 more. Warmth spreads through your body. You find yourself back at Mariner Mordy's absinthe mill, a glass of its finest in your hand. You've already had a few, but what's the harm in another? No one is needing you right now, nor tomorrow, nor the day after that. In fact, it's just you in here tonight. Even the staff are nowhere to be seen. You move the glass to your lips while you ponder this development. Bounces off something in front of your face. Odd. You place the glass back on the table. It floats away in the cold waters of the Z that surround you, filling the dingy establishment. You tap at your face. A metal mask covers it. Why are you wearing such a thing? A monster sits before you. No, not a monster. A person in a thick diving suit. They turn their cyclopean gaze at you and slump forward, their head crashing down onto the table. You chuckle. They've clearly had one too many. And then the music starts. Church bells and choral music. At this hour? How peculiar. You await the end. 7 and 7, and almost 7. The hourglass trickles away. You fight to regain your sense, the vision already fading, gasping lungfuls of thrice breathed air. 20.5 minutes. Silas lets out a cry as the hourglass in front of him trickles out. Back on the ship, something much worse awaits. Old Fritz's gnarled, impossible tail pushes harder, propelling him out of sight. Just like that, he's gone. No! The diver cries. All falls silent in the bridge. The music emanating from Old Fritz goes with him, echoing distantly into the abyss. Steady, says Silas, his voice quieter now. He's toying with us. Glances over his shoulder at you. We're sitting ducks, the diver says, with crowing vehemence. Silas merely smiles. We're in position. The last sand falls from the hourglass. She's here. Then the music builds and grows once more. It's faint at first, as if an orchestra were warming up, but soon the cacophony builds to a terrible crescendo, and you understand what's happening. Old Fritz has turned around. He's heading straight for you. He approaches. So does she. Through the shroud of the abyss rears the mangled, rotting face of Old Fritz. His thick skin sloughs off with the force of the current, revealing ancient, cracked stone architecture underneath. The image of a church flashes in your mind at the sight. He opens his gigantic mouth, the movement causing stonework to crumble and fall into the abyss, where you might expect Feline. Instead, you see row upon row of crooked stones cratering his maw. Not just stones, tombstones, close enough to read, which means you must be... Brace for the end. Old Fritz, the great and terrible, a maw full of tombstones, and you're falling right into it. You grip the lamp's control sticks hard enough to feel the decayed metal begin to buckle under your fingers. Is this really it? Is this how you go? Swallowed by a hell-spawned monster of the deep? You look to Silas, who simply stares ahead, making no moves to stop this, instead smiling at how close he's managed to bring the Incredulous to the beast. His sibling, the doomed diver, still holds fast to the helm, turning it drastically to steer you away. Futile pursuit. Next, you look at the drownies outside. Some peel off the ship, falling from the force being exerted on them from above and below. Are they the lucky ones, destined to float down to the bottom of the abyss? You don't know. One final harpoon fires from its gun, chirping away the cross on one of the tombstones. You make out the young lad who fired. Someone still has fight in them. Then the awful mouth closes, and darkness swallows you all. And somewhere a bell tolls. At last, kinship with Jonah. So we've been eaten by a whale. And with that, this episode's gone on longer than I expected, so I'm going to end it here. Hopefully there isn't just like 2 screens in the next episode. We'll worry about that next week. But either way, thank you all very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, let me know what you think. Your comments are greatly appreciated. Thank you again to the channel and the coffee supporters. It really does help me keep making these videos, as does liking and pleasing the YouTube algorithm. It really does help more than you think it would. So thank you all very much for the support. And as always, I'll see you next time.